6. Welcome everyone to Chattanooga Self Improvement Meetup. Our guest speaker today, one of our own, who's been with us now for about a month, Nicole Curtis, who was an over-the-road truck driver and is now director of finance at Loudon Utilities. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole and let her share with us Over the Mountain.
Thank you, Glenn. It's my pleasure to be here this morning and share this story. Actually, at our last meetup, you posed a great question to the group. You challenged each of us to think about something we want to incorporate in our everyday life. So I really want to start off by that and open it up for the group to share what you've decided on, or if you've thought about it, what is something that you might want to start incorporating in your everyday life. Then I want to share this story about Over the Mountain and relate that back to how, when you are where you are, and then you make this decision to do something, and that's where you want to be. Okay, if you think about it as a journey. In the middle of that journey, there's this unexpected zone where all sorts of things can happen to get you off track. And that's, in this story, it was the mountain for me. But I want to relate that back to the challenges that can come up. So what are some of the things that you maybe have talked about or thought about that you want to incorporate in your everyday life? Corey, or?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I need to do is walk every day. And I think walking every day is so important mentally, physically, but it carries a lot of weight to it. So my wife and I bought these Nordic poles, and we've only used them like once or twice. And I think it's time to break those out and start using those, because when you go up a mountain or a hill, you can use your arms. But the point is to incorporate more of my own personal exercise and self-improvement, because I think we get so distracted on helping other people so much that we forget about ourselves. And I think that's where maybe I just fail in that department. So I need to work on that strength. Great.
Mark, is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, had to unmute. There's one of the things I've been wanting to get back to is doing the watercolor work that I do. Haven't done that in a long time. Like to incorporate that back into a much more active part of every day.
Awesome. Thanks.
I want to jump in and second what Corey said, and that is the importance of exercise. As all of you know, as you get younger, it's very important to stay physically fit, with the rule being, if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's been very important at this tender age for me not to lose whatever I have. So being able to get out in safe places and to walk in the park or to walk up and down the street in front of the house, just to keep things moving, because you can really lose a lot of coordination in a 2-month period if you don't use it. And with the exercise, your mind, you need to keep that blood moving to the mind in order to be focused. And the outdoor exposure of just looking at what's around you to stay aware of the beauty of nature, the things that are happening, what's developing, and what have you. And it gives you a good self realization of where you are and how many things that are happening around you that you need to keep up with.
Awesome. Great observation. Aram, how about you?
I'll second or third the thing on exercise. I've started, my doctor said I need to lose some weight, so I try to, after every meal, to go walk. And our neighborhood is a small, it's one street with 2 cul-de-sacs, so I walk that. It's about a mile. And one of the nice things has been being able to meet a lot of my neighbors that, just never, usually I'm on the first cul-de-sac, so I come in our neighborhood and come to my house and, come inside. So, just by being able to walk, I've met a number of my neighbors, so it's been really nice. And the thing that I need to work on is sort of the business side of a business, which I hate. Keeping track of expenses and and the books and all that. I do not enjoy that. So to me, that's my mountain.
That's
trying to.
That can be challenging for sure.
Yeah.
Eckhartz, do you want to try to weigh in here?
Maybe Deborah's more prepared right now than they are.
Hey, Deborah, we were just going around the room sharing our thoughts on something we would like to incorporate in our day-to-day life, what Glenn challenged us with last time.
Oh. And you want to hear from me, huh? What to engage in this is a very difficult time for all of us. It is challenging to think of what to do on ahead, and I'm certainly not alone in that. And one of the things that I would like to do and planning to do is somehow to take advantage of this time and make a difference in it. I am totally an introvert. And so it has been quite a challenge to be more visible, have my voice out there more, to let people help me do that. Thank you, Glenn. It's amazing how much an introvert can resist doing it. It's just totally contradicts everything. And yet, if we're in business for ourselves, we are also visible, we're competitive, we want to have that brand out there, and we can in many ways. And in some ways during these times, an introvert is more valuable than ever. It's just an amazing creative position to be in. It makes you more vulnerable, and you have to deal with that. And I know that Glenn knows this. I have a family member who is in hospice right now. That does not help the vulnerability situation. And I know I'm probably not alone in that, with having family members who are vulnerable. And yet life goes on. I remember my dad talking about that. Life goes on, and we are going to make a difference with it and use it the best way we can, however long we have on this planet, because we know we're not ever going to be here forever. I like to think that. I always thought, well, it couldn't be me. I'm going to be here for as long as I want. Yeah, so we make the time count.
Awesome. I certainly relate to your thoughts on being an introvert. I consider myself to be one as well. And
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Here we are, and talking to everyone on video here, and about to share this story. So I'm excited. I can relate to each of your challenges that you set before you about exercising and being more active. Maybe, Mark, I've never tried art, but I'm really interested to hear more about your watercolor challenge. So thank you all for sharing that. I'll go ahead and start into this story. And it began, it was 5 years ago. It was a Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, before the 3-day Labor Day weekend. And I was in the accounting office at Loudon Utilities, wrapping up my week's worth of journal entries and bank reconciliations, a very normal thing to be doing. And there was a lot of conversation about what everybody's plans were for the weekend. And the phone on my desk rang, and I looked at the number, and it was my mom. And I picked up the phone, and she began to tell me this story. Now, here's what you need to know about my mom. She owns a trucking company. She delivers refrigerated freight all over the U.S., from Florida to Michigan or the Carolinas out to Colorado. She moves freight. She began this business many years ago, and she wrangles about 5 trucks and trailers to keep all this moving in the right direction. But she called, and she began to tell me something that had happened with her business. One of her drivers had picked up a load of chicken, fresh chicken from Gainesville, Georgia, and it was due to be in Madison, Wisconsin on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. The driver had made it from Gainesville, Georgia to Knoxville, Tennessee, and then he had taken on a case of food poisoning, and he could not continue on, but there was this load of freight that had to be delivered. And I knew exactly where she was going with this, and I said, "What time do we leave?" And we began from there. At that time, I did not know what was about to happen. About 2 hours later, my life changed, but I didn't know what was about to happen. So, in telling you that, I began with where I was. I was in the accounting office doing my normal thing, and I got this phone call. That's where I was at the time. And part of that beginning is also understanding how I got there. In my family, when I was growing up, it was expected that when you turn 16, you get your regular driver's license. And when you turn 18, you go to the DMV and you take the test to get your Class A commercial driver's license certification. It was just expected. I had 2 older brothers that did it. I did it when I turned 18, and my younger sister did when she turned 18. We had a family business, and it required moving equipment, and we also had some local contracts to move goods. Everybody pitched in. And it was just something that you were expected to know how to do and have the license for. In fact, for 2 years, whenever I was younger, we had a contract to move goods from Athens, Tennessee to Etowah, Tennessee. It's a 20-mile drive, so it was just local. And in that 20 miles, there were 21 red lights. So I got really, really good at shifting gears in this big truck. And does everyone know what you're picturing? The semi truck, right? 18 wheels and tires, 80,000 pounds, takes up the full lane of the road. But so that was my early life. And then I went on, I got married, I became a mom. And then there was this day I was at home with my 6-month-old son, and it occurred to me that in all the things I had done, I had never completed my formal education. And looking at my son, I realized I was not in a position to financially support us independently. I couldn't get a job that would pay well enough to, even cover the cost of childcare. And so that day when he was 6 months old, I made the decision that I would go back to school, I would finish my degree, and I would get a job that would allow me to support us the best that I could. And for some reason, the very specific thought came to me that if there was a day that he needed to be in attend private school, a private education institution, I would be able to write the check for the tuition. That was something very specific that I wanted to be able to do. And so that's how I ended up completing my degree in accounting. And then I became an accountant for Loudon Utilities. And that's how I ended up in the accounting office these years ago with an accounting degree, working as an accountant, but still a truck driver at the same time. So that was where I was and how I got there. And then we made the decision of where I wanted to go that weekend. We were going to Madison, Wisconsin. That's the next part of this, is knowing where you want to go. And each of you shared something that you want to accomplish, somewhere you want to be, healthier state of being with more exercise. Maybe the watercolor is more relaxing or an outlet for energy. Deborah, in being more vulnerable and putting yourself out there. So that's somewhere you want to be. And so with that, I would say, be sure you take a look at where you are and how you got to where you are. And then now you know where you want to be. All right, so back to the story. We want to be in Madison, Wisconsin. We're in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's 700 miles away. Now, Google will tell you that that drive takes 11 hours. But I will tell you, in a road tractor, that drive takes every bit of 14 hours, the best you could do it. It was 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and we had to be there at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. So there was about a 2-hour window of flexible time there. So we had to get in the truck and get going. I met my mom at Watt Road. We got in the truck. She was still making phone calls, taking care of business, and I just got in the driver's seat. You know, we did our pre-trip inspection, make sure everything's okay. Get out on the road. We want to get ahead or get through rush hour traffic as best we can. And, and that went amazingly well. And we were so thrilled. She was making phone calls to other drivers. I was driving. I was excited because actually, 45 minutes prior to this, I was sitting at my desk driving a keyboard and a mouse. And then now I'm sitting behind the wheel of this 18-wheeler, shifting gears and driving through Knoxville traffic. And that was going really well. I was excited. It was all good. We got just above Knoxville. If you're familiar with the roadways, you take I-40 and then you go 275 around Knoxville. And then from 275, you take I-75 straight north, and that was going to be our route. Well, when I made the change from 275 to 75 north, my geography started kicking in. And I looked over at Mom and I said, are we going to go across Monteagle Mountain? Glenn, you mentioned this the last time you said, was this Monteagle? I asked that specific question. I said, are we going to go across Monteagle Mountain? And, she was on the phone and she just kind of shook her head and she mouthed words, no, Monteagle's going toward Nashville. And I was like, oh, good, that's great. And that was great because in all the years I've had this commercial driver's license and all the driving that I had done, I had never gone across a mountain. And there's a very good reason for that, because it is absolutely terrifying to go across a mountain in a road tractor. Both of my parents were truck drivers. I was always in the loop on these stories, and you would hear these terrifying instances of trucks going up a mountain and some major mechanical issue happening. The driver misses a gear and you tear out the transmission, or you get to the top and then actually somebody mentioned earlier, like getting to the top of the mountain. Well, in a truck, you get to the top of the mountain, that's great. But guess what? You have to get down the mountain, and you hear these instances about trucks running off. So I had never driven across a mountain before. So I was very relieved when Mom said, no, Monteagle is going toward Nashville. And then all of a sudden, she got very quiet. She was talking on the phone. She got very quiet. And she said, hey, let me call you back. She hung up the phone. And it startled me. I looked at her and I said, what's wrong? And she said, you're about to go across Jellicoe Mountain. And my heart just stopped. I was not prepared to drive across the mountain. Again, an hour before, I was balancing debits and credits in a journal entry to reconcile a bank account, okay? And an hour later, I'm in a truck, and I'm about to drive across my very first mountain. And sure enough, we're starting up the hill. There is no getting off the exit and changing out who's driving. We're committed. I have to climb this mountain before me. And it's not just me. It's me. It's this truck and this trailer. Together, it weighs 80,000 pounds. And that's something that I don't know if you've ever been in a road tractor, but the weight of it is something you have to feel. And the only way I can describe it to you is that if you've ever been to the grocery store and you've got your buggy, your shopping cart, right? And you pile everything in it, and that grocery cart it probably weighs 200 pounds. And think about how hard it is to get that buggy going, or to hold it back, or to steer. You know, it's the weight. It's overload. It's heavy, and it's hard to maneuver. And that's how that truck is. It's pushing you, it's pulling you, and you're just doing your best to keep it between the lines, keep it in gear. And now there's a mountain ahead of you that you have to climb. Has anyone here driven a manual transmission? Do you know what I mean when I talk about a manual transmission? Okay. Now, in a car, in a regular transmission, you push the clutch in, you shift the gear, you let the clutch out, and you've made the shift, right? In a truck, there's another detail. It's a synchronized transmission. You can't just push the clutch in and shift the gear. The engine and the transmission, it requires that you are going the precise speed, 40 miles an hour, 50, you have to be going the precise speed. And the engine has to be turning at the precise RPMs, or it will not accept the gear. There's a timing that you have to get right. Now there's a mountain. I'm in high gear. This is a 13-speed transmission. Glenn, can I share a screen share real quick? I want to share what this transmission diagram looks like. So you can see, if you think of like a five-speed transmission, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in a truck, it looks a little different. Glenn, can I share a?
Yeah, you should be able to. You should be able to just hit the share button. Do you see share screen down at the bottom?
It's saying it's disabled. Is there any?
Oh, well, let's see. Hold on a minute. I don't know. Under my controls, let's see, multiple. All right, wait a minute. Now try it.
All right. Let's see.
It says multiple participants could share.
Okay. This is what a 13-speed transmission looks like. This is the little diagram they put on the visor of the truck. You've got 6 slots. There's 4 that you operate in, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you go to the high side, which if you look over to the right, you'll see a range selector there. You go to the high side, and that's 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, while you are in 5, 6, 7, 8, you split those gears. So there's a 5 high and low. There's a 6 high and low. There's a 7 high and low, and there's an 8 high and low. So there's actually 12 gears in those 4 slots over there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then there's 4 more on top of that. So that's what a 13-speed transmission is. And whenever you are in this situation and you're shifting gears, you have about 3 seconds to make that shift, get the timing right, and keep the truck moving forward. I'm going to take that down so I can see you guys again. But that's the transmission. That's the challenge. There's a mountain ahead of us. We're going up. And so after Mom said you're about to go up Jellicoe Mountain, and my heart stopped beating for those few moments. Sure enough, I was in the highest gear. We were going 75 miles an hour. And the truck, we begin this ascent up the mountain. And sure enough, soon enough, the gravity takes effect. All that weight that we're pulling starts to pull us backwards. And the truck begins losing momentum, begins losing power. And you hear the engine start to whine just a little bit. I'm watching the gauges. And I know that the time is coming. I have this window of time to make a shift, to go from the gear I'm in to a lower gear so that I can keep climbing this mountain. And my heart's racing because I really don't want to mess this up. I want to make sure I get that gear right. And all of my training comes back to me in slow-mo, and I break down that process of shifting that gear. And this is what happens in your mind is you realize that to make this shift, the first thing you have to do is you have to let go of the gear that you are in. And that is terrifying because while you're in a gear, at least you're moving, right? But you know that you're losing power and you have to let it go. When you let it go, then you are going to be in neutral. You're in no man's land there. You're in neutral, but you have to pass through neutral and you find the next gear. And the crucial part to that is when you're in neutral, you are very, very aware of your thoughts. The only thought you allow yourself to think is, I will find the next gear. I will make this happen. Every time I've ever missed a gear, the one thing that was in common with that is whenever I was in neutral and I thought, oh, I hope I don't miss this gear. Oh, I hope I don't grind that gear. I would miss it every single time. But whenever you let go of a gear and then you go into that neutral space, if you think to yourself, I will find this next gear, it'll happen. It will. It'll fall right in. And then the third step is that whenever it does when it does accept the gear, that's when you add the fuel to it. That's when you mash the accelerator and you go on, and you've got this new sense of power, this new sense of energy, and the truck will surge again and you're going. Just before I was about to make this first shift going up the mountain, all of that was playing through my mind. I had it worked out. I thought, Nicole, it's simple. Let go, know that you're going to find the next gear, and then pour the fuel onto it, and you're going to be fine. My mom said 4 words to me. She was completely quiet. Otherwise, we were both terrified. But she said 4 words. I had my hand on the gear shifter. I was about to let go of that gear. And she said 4 words. She reminded me. She said, remember to drop 2. And what that means is, it's the rule whenever you're learning truck driving, is whenever you're on that kind of a grade and you shift, in the 3 seconds it takes to go from one gear to the next, you lose so much speed and momentum that if you just change one gear, it's not powerful enough. You have to go down 2 gears. So like if I was in 13th gear, I had to go down to 11th gear. Do you know what? I had forgotten that. In all of my mental prep of let go, make the shift, add the fuel, I had forgotten this golden rule of trucking, that you drop 2 gears whenever you're going up a mountain. And she said those words at just the right moment. And if nothing else, that has always reminded me that be sure whenever you are dealing with anything in life that you have the right people around you, because they can say 2 or 3 words at just the right time and they will help you tremendously. So sure enough, I made the shift and I went from 13th down till the 11th gear slot. And then I breathed because I made it. I made that shift. Now that lasted for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And then guess what? The mountain is still climbing and you have to do this again. So you make the shift again and you go from 11th gear to 9th gear. And then about 45 seconds later, you've got to do it again, and you go from 11th gear to 9th. And then I did it one more time from 9th to 7th gear on that mountain on Jellicoe. So Jellicoe in trucking terms is not the most terrifying mountain because you can climb it in that 7th gear. Now, like Monteagle Mountain, Glenn, you mentioned, Monteagle Mountain, you'll get down to 3rd gear. And that gets really scary because whenever you're down to 3rd gear, you realize you've only got 2 left. And you hope you've got enough power to make it to the top. It's not even about shifting the gears. You just hope there's enough horsepower under the hood to get you to the top. Black Mountain in North Carolina, you get down to 2nd gear. That's how steep it is. So this was Jellicoe. I got down to 7th gear and was thrilled that I realized we were nearing the top of the mountain. I was in 7th gear and I was not going to have to do that shifting again. We had made it and we were going to be okay. Then we got to the top, and Mom, we were cresting over. And I was just so happy. I had climbed that mountain. I had climbed my first mountain in a truck, and it was great. And then Mom said 3 words to me. She said, "Drop one more." And that is the key. That's the other golden rule in trekking is whatever gear it takes to climb the mountain, whenever you go down the mountain, you go down one more gear before you start off the top. And the reason you do that is because the engine helps control the momentum of the truck. The engine actually kind of holds the truck back more than the brakes ever can. So you keep it in a low enough gear that it won't get too fast and it won't get out of control. So I did. I shifted one more gear down before we started off. And the nerve-wracking part about going down the mountain is that you really can't do anything. You have to just stay calm and let the truck do its thing. You have to let the engine do its thing. You watch the speedometer, you watch it start to pick up speed, you watch the engine RPMs start to wind up just a little bit, and you get kind of nervous, and then you'll touch the brakes, and you can hold the brake pedal down for 5 seconds, and you count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you take your foot off the brake. The reason you only hold it for 5 seconds, if you hold it longer than that, those brake shoes, they're going to get too hot, and they can catch on fire, then all kinds of bad things happen. But you hold the brake pedal down for 5 seconds, and you let it off, and then you have to count to 20 to make sure that they get enough air and they've had a chance to cool down before you use them again. And it's that process all the way down the mountain is you leave the truck in gear. You don't start shifting gears. You leave it in the gear you had it at the top. Touch the brakes. This is an exercise in self-control. You touch the brakes, you count it out for 5 seconds. Wait 20 seconds. The speed picks up, the RPMs pick up, and you hold the brakes and you go again. When we made it to the bottom of that mountain, I looked at Mom and I said, "I really, really love you. You know that, right? Because you just took 5 years off of my life back there." We were both so happy that we made it. We joked that I took 2 breaths on the mountain. I took one before I started, and I took one when I got done. So I was never so happy to get over a mountain in my life. And when I think back on it, I realize how important those lessons are, and how much they apply to every other situation I've ever faced. Even going to finish my degree, right? I knew where I was. I was a mom, and I had a 6-month-old baby. I knew exactly where I was. I knew how I had gotten there. I knew where I wanted to be. I wanted to have a degree. I wanted to have a good job to provide for this child. And in between those 2 points of where I was and where I wanted to be, there have been lots of challenges, and every single one of them was dealt in that way. I had to let go of maybe a belief I had that, college wasn't possible, or I had to let go of some people say, "Oh, you get a college degree, but then you won't get a job in that field. You'll get a job in something else." I had to let go of that stuff. I had to set my intention that I will do this and I will succeed. And then I fueled that decision with my actions that I took every day. And that got me up a lot of mountains. And then, you get to the top and you think, I've conquered this. But then that's whenever you start exercising control. That's when you don't get carried away. Yes, I got the degree. And then I got the job offer. And then it was time to be very aware of what I was doing and exercise self-control so I could keep going and get where I wanted to be in life. I want to pause just for a second and maybe see if in talking about that, if anything resonates with you and how you see the challenges and how this approach can help you. Does anybody want to go first? Hold on, Maurice. I think you're muted.
Mike?
There
Okay,
you
I'm unmuted. There is a similarity to riding a motorcycle, going up a hill, going up a mountain, and coming down. And brakes are not a good idea in many cases. And this is where understanding, and you also have to, with a motorcycle, you can listen to the sound of your engine. Your mom may not be there, but your engine is constantly talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about knowing what you have to work with and understanding timing and sequence in order to be effective in reaching your destination. And it's the same kind of planning when you're on a bike, whether you're by yourself, and especially if there's someone else with you when you're riding in a group. And you need to stay in your formation. And in order to do that, you need to listen to the engine and know when to make those shifts. It's the same way in business. You have these forecasts and you see what the trends are, and you do listen to what is happening with the economy, and hopefully you are interpreting what you see correctly. And if you are not interpreting it correctly, it's always good to have someone else to ask, am I reading this correctly? So I am inspired by how many gears you have to shift, because as a motorcycle rider, the last thing I want to do is get behind a truck going up a mountain. I want to go around. But thank you so very much. I think it really sheds light on what it means to execute that profession. And it's not for everybody, because we're talking many hours behind the windshield in order to get things done. I see you got your cat in the background.
He decided to join me, so I'm not even going to argue with him. He'll just come back. So
great story. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned about a business owner and the economy, and think back to maybe January 1 of this year. You've got a business, you've got an idea, and you're thinking about where you want to be by the end of the year. And guess what showed up in March?
Yeah.
Mountain of coronavirus, right? And so everyone's having to shift and adjust with that. And I'll say it again, I think the key to that there is making the shift, is knowing you got to let go of whatever you thought the normal things were and how you were going to get where you want to be. You have to let go of some belief or some sense of normalcy and find another way, find another gear to tackle this and get your objectives. Thank you, Maurice.
It's a very good analogy there, Nicole. Timing is of greatest importance in most anything. And like in dealing with the coronavirus, we've talked about overcoming adversity. So that's basically I think the subject that comes up consistently on Self Improvement Meetup. And Einstein stresses the importance of timing. He says the opportunity is there in a crisis or an adversity. He says it's in the middle. And if you wait too late, you miss that opportunity. Likewise, if you miss that gear, you may have really goofed up. I've been riding a 10-speed bike, which is interesting, on a mountain. And yesterday I'd gone, not for a long ride, I went about 3.5 miles. And with a 10-speed bike, the gears, you can't use those as brakes. You've got to use your front brake and your rear brake. Well, I was coming down a hill, braking, not going that fast, but it was in a very narrow road at the time. And I said, oh my gosh, if I brake as fast as I think I need to, I'm going over the handlebars. So anyway, I did a combination of applying the front and the rear brakes. And finally, out of desperation, when I saw that I wasn't going to turn fast enough, I was headed straight to a ditch. I just kind of put my feet down. Well, I went on over into the ditch. Didn't hurt me, but I ended up with a huge gash in my right ankle. And it's not that bad, but it sure was swollen and sore last night. So timing is of the utmost importance. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, there's a couple things I want to say. One is moving into the place I moved in was, the timing was everything. It really was. January, February is when I started signing the lease and getting everything ready, and it took me 8 months to find this place. And then I get in here, and 11 days later, I have to close down. So I was like, wow, that's great. Because I went back to the old place yesterday, actually, and I took a little bit of video and stuff, and I couldn't imagine opening back up in that small, tiny place. It just wouldn't work. And going back to that is something I never want to do. Going backwards, you have to keep moving forward. Well, when I lived in Alaska for 22 years, I had to drive in the wintertime, of course, and I lived in a town called Soldotna, and I would drive to Anchorage every weekend to train with my sensei. And my parents lived in Anchorage, and one night when I was listening to the radio, I was listening to Art Bell. You guys ever listen to Art Bell? Coast to Coast AM?
Yeah.
And he would have some spooky stuff on, I'm telling you what, when I would drive that road. Well, one night I'm listening to the radio. I only get one station in, and I heard this broadcast saying that Highway 1 is the most dangerous road in the United States. And I was on that road at that moment. And I'd had to drive the road all the time. One night, I was following a semi, and it was a curvy road in a blizzard. And I've done this many times. And how you follow a semi in a blizzard when you can't see anything is you have to look at the two little red lights on both sides. So when I was going up the mountain, this little mountain, actually, it was curving, and all of a sudden the semi dashed to the left. And I said to myself, at that split moment, I'm following that guy. And I followed those lights. And you know what I missed? A moose. A 2,000-pound moose's butt was sticking out in the road. I completely missed it because
Wow.
I followed those lights. Well, let me tell you something else. It's going to blow you away. One time I was driving to Anchorage with my girlfriend in the car. And we drove and everything seemed normal. And I arrive at my sensei's dojo. And I get there and he says, "Oh, thank goodness you're alive." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You have no idea, do you?" And I go, "No, what do you mean?" He goes, "There's avalanches. There's avalanches where you came from." There were 17 avalanches. And some were a mile wide and some were 30 feet deep. And I missed it by minutes. Minutes, guys. Timing. I could have died.
Yeah.
So it's all about, realizing when you go through these situations, they just make you stronger. And this whole pandemic, we got to come out stronger and more innovative and smarter. And I think more generous and more kind and to one another. I think that's important as well. But thank you, Nicole, for your whole speech, because it does relate, like Maurice said, to business. And I can definitely relate to that as well.
Thank you. I want you, as you were talking, something else came to mind. One of my favorite quotes, I'd shared this with Glenn before, is from Sir Edmund Hillary. He was the first man to successfully scale Mount Everest. And there had been many before him that had tried it. If you read the whole history, several professional mountaineers had attempted Everest. And Edmund Hillary was not actually in the same league as those gentlemen, but he and a Sherpa from the area named Tinzinga, they successfully climbed Mount Everest. I'm not going to say the year because I'm not 100% sure what year it was. It's 1940-ish. And he is quoted as saying that it is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. And I love that. I think that it's a great reminder. It's not about the challenge we face. It's about what we're willing to do inside to overcome it. And then we're forever changed by it. So thank you, Corey, for that. Hey, Deborah, did you want to play?
Yeah, all these wonderful stories about trucks and motorcycles, and I love it. And I grew up in Bermuda, in the island, when cars were not made legal for civilians until after World War II, close to 1950. And my grandfather was not like me. He was a total extrovert, and he imported one of the earliest cars. There was no car dealership on the island at the time. So he imported it, and because we were a British colony, it came from England. And he loved his car, but he was a terrible driver. It was awful being in the car with him. And it was, of course, it was a stick shift. And we jump around, and I was in the back seat going, as a little girl. We got pulled over by the military police once because he was driving so horribly. And I still remember that one. And one day, though, because he stood out, he was so visible in this car, it got stolen. Now, there were no garages on the island yet, so whoever stole it had to just put it in their front yard, and of course, they found it. And I'm always impressed by what my grandfather did at that point. One, he engraved his initials on the front door of the car, so everybody, if it got stolen again, it would just be returned to him. He didn't give up. And it was a beautiful car. It was just a treasure. And we would go for drives in it and look at the beautiful surroundings on the island. And when the first traffic light was installed in the downtown Hamilton, the capital, we'd go down there and sit in the car and watch the colors change. Wow, this is really cool. So what you learn from this is the small details can be wonderful, and determination can be wonderful. And even if it gets stolen, put your initials on it, go again. If it gets stolen again, it'll come back to you even sooner. And my grandfather was an entrepreneur, the first, probably one of the first, I have to be careful on that, professional realtors on the island. And he only had an 8th grade education, and that did not stop him at all. And it really, when I tell the story and I think about you and all the others who persevere in difficulties, I'm inspired to do the same, even though some days I wonder, why bother? And I think of my grandfather and the initials. He was Meyer M. Malloy, MMM, on that beautiful car.
Very cool. Thank you, Deborah. Mark, did you have something you wanted to share? You're unmuted.
Yeah, you talked about going over the mountain and all of the intricacies of doing it in a vehicle, in a truck, motorcycle, and we kind of take for granted when you go over a mountain in any kind of motorized vehicle, the ease with which relatively that can happen. You take that for granted until you need to walk over a mountain, or you intentionally go to the top of the mountain. My sons and I did that back about 10 years ago when we chose to try and climb Mount Shasta in Northern California. It's over 14,000 feet tall. It's got a, you start out the walk up portion at 10,000 feet. Well, actually just short of that. And then you climb to a camp called Lake Helen. There's no lake there. It's at about 12,000 feet. And then you keep going up. Thing is when you go over a mountain, there's an incredible amount of planning and preparation that you have to go through. You have to get yourself ready, get yourself in shape, because it's going to be a huge physical effort. We lived at the time in Atlanta, maybe 700 feet above sea level. The air is extremely different.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can take about 3 steps And somebody talked about getting hiking poles. If you don't have hiking poles on the side of a mountain, you will die. You need them. They will keep your body upright. You can take 3 steps and you can plant those things and you can lean on them while your heart beats out of your chest. And you think about the next 3 steps that you are going to take. The other thing with all that is you go, unless you're extremely experienced, you go with somebody who already has gone or knows how to go. A lot of lessons in being able to get up. And the one that was the surpriser to us, I mean, they're beautiful moments. There were moments that we were going up, you have multiple paths you can go up. We went through, speaking about avalanches, it was a place called Avalanche Gulch. It was known for point release avalanches by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So in order to make it up, you have to start at about 10 o'clock the night before, and you hike through the night. But it's almost like hiking in an Ansel Adams photograph. It is so intensely beautiful. These deep darks and whites, because you're walking on a snowfield the entire time, and you're just going up this incredible landscape. But you have to turn around by no later than 1, or you may get caught in an avalanche. You can only get so far. At a certain point, you have to turn around. Then you realize that 12 hours of effort you expended getting up is going to equal at least 5 hours getting back down. And the sun has been out, so that snow that you walked on with the snowshoes and crampons earlier now becomes 4 feet of obstacle for you to get out of the entire time going down. Many, many, many lessons to learn about how do you prepare, what equipment do you need, who do you need to go with, how does this all work? And once you get to the quote peak, you're not done.
Exactly.
You have other things to do. So that's my little story about a mountain.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. You're exactly right. Getting to the top is you're only halfway there, right? You have to get back down to the bottom safely. Thank you.
And you're exhausted. You've spent all that energy at altitude, and you are physically blown.
Yes. Aram, did you want to share anything?
Well, in the early 60s, when I was small and young, we lived in southern Colorado. This was called the San Luis Valley. And I lived in 2 little towns there. One's called Monte Vista, which it's a Spanish name of the town, which means mountain view. And we were, it's this deep valley surrounded by huge mountains. One of them is called Mount Blanc because it was white year-round. I never climbed up it. We did go up to Pikes Peak, which, another high mountain in Colorado, although on that one you can actually drive. But trying to think, I've had to cross a lot of mountains, to get where I am, I like to say I crammed 4 years of college into 6. So, I had to persevere to.
Aram, you climbed the mountain when you left Qualcomm. What wasn't it Qualcomm?
Yes, well, yes, but that wasn't by choice.
Well, I know sometimes we choose to climb a mountain. Other times the mountain's
Yeah.
just put in front of us.
Exactly.
Calico Mountain just showed up in front of me. I mean, it's hard to believe that a mountain can just drop in front of
Right.
me. It really did. I was not expecting that one at all. So
Yeah. But as you pointed out, and others that have talked before, you just have to persevere and take it one step at a time.
sorry, something started to fall.
Well, that's perfect to go into what I want to say just real quick. It's pretty funny. 20-something years ago, I would ask kids, there's two mountains. One is steep and there's broken glass, and there's one that's a windy road and it's paved. And the prize at the end is basically kind of the same. So which road do you take? And 20 years ago, Alaskan kids would say, I'm taking the mountain. As time has gone on, it's been wishy-washy. And then what happened was about a year ago, I asked the question, and this kid said this, and I was like, And he said, the windy road. And I said, why? He said, because it's more efficient.
Well, with efficiency, and Mark, I want to go back to your story about elevation. Went up Mount Edwards on a motorcycle. I have asthma. I had asthma at the time, and I did not realize what a severe change it would be the higher up you go. So, on two wheels, it's a real different situation because I thought about it, and I got to the top, and I knew my judgment was so poor at that point because no oxygen, you can't breathe. So a couple were walking by, and I said, ma'am, here's my ID. I can't breathe. Can I ride down in your car? And I'll send someone back to pick up my bike. I was with 3 other bikers, but the point was for me to get down. She turned out to be an inhalation therapist and knew exactly what I needed. So they took me to the nearest little curio shop, and they sold $10 bottles of oxygen. That was the trick. That was the trick. So I'm in their car, and here's the funny part of how having a good staff or having other people with you that know what the objective is, how to get there, and how to do what it is that you would do if you cannot do it. So I'm in the back seat of the car, and I see this beautiful silver bike streak by the car. And I'm saying, look at that fool on that bike. Hey, that's my bike. So one of the guys that I was on the trip with had taken my bike down. He hitched back up and brought his bike down. But again, it's about planning. When you think about Corey, you open your doors, and then here's this new virus thing that says you're shut down. What do you do? How do you make the adjustment? And Glenn, to your point, when you saw the ditch in motorcycling, they teach whatever you look at, that's where you're going. So to look past the ditch to where you want to go is something you have to practice for constantly. And it's the kind of changes that we are required to make right now, all of us. I'm sure if we're still in business or even meetup meetings, we don't have as many people. So there are some adjustments to be made. And where we are going in the future, I think is important because it talks about what we've been getting ready for all along.
Good point there, Maurice. And I think it's very similar. I think of just in driving a car, which is so simple as compared with driving a motorcycle and especially an 18-wheeler. But there again, if you start to slide, you can't look at the direction the hood's pointing. You got to look at the direction you want to go. And I found that my first experience of doing a lot of driving in the snow, even though it was the reason I moved to Richmond, Virginia, I was told that the climate was very similar to Athens, Georgia, where I'd moved from when I accepted a position there. But No, it wasn't. There was a lot more snow and even more ice. And so I got to be pretty good driving on snow and ice. Aaron Murray, I see you've joined us a little late. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, jumping in here a little bit late, but good to hear everything from you all. You know, we've heard a lot of stories this morning, and one thing that I thought as soon as you had the transmission analogy is a lot of times external problems really move us in the right direction, right? When you're going up the mountain, when do you choose to go to neutral and switch? When the mountain tells you, when the truck tells you. But what happens when you enter those scenarios when you're going just over the crest and you're heading downhill? When do you make that choice to go to neutral and switch? And I think a lot of times when I, think about problems that I've encountered, it's much easier for me when the problem is in front of me to make that transition, to change, to learn something. But when I've got to make the choice to change, I find that to be a lot more difficult. To force myself to go to neutral, take a little gap, and then change.
Aaron, did you find yourself going to neutral during the coronavirus after it practically shut down one of your businesses?
That was an external problem. So no, I actually just downshifted. I've gotten into the boat business out of all things. And I've sold 3 boats so far in the past 2 months.
That I was thinking when Nicole was talking about going down the mountain and braking, and I remember when I got my first larger boat, and here we're not dealing with 80,000 pounds, but I had about 23,000 pounds. And when you travel and there are no brakes, that's interesting. And that was one of the most interesting things that I dealt with. It was one thing with a ski boat, but with a larger boat, you really got to plan in advance for when you want to stop. I think I saw some Bob Ritchie. Would you like to share?
He's on mute.
Let's see. Bob, you're going to need to unmute. I was trying to see if I could unmute you if you want to talk.
There he is.
Hey, yeah, sorry about that. No, I've been having to use a cell phone. I guess by this morning and everything, I had to take a friend to work, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss this meeting because she had to be there around 7 o'clock, and that's the time when you guys got started. So I was able to get on towards the middle of Nicole's speech, or dissertation, and I thought it was great. I would love to share that with my granddaughter because she needs some guidance, and I don't know how to give it to her.
Well, you've heard it, and we are recording today, and I will try to get it uploaded to YouTube today or tomorrow, and I'll post it so you can share it with her. Well,
I appreciate that because she don't listen to Grandpa, but she might listen to Nicole.
That's right. That's right. And for those of you that may be wondering, Bob was talking 7 o'clock. He's on Central Time. You're over around, is it Mount Juliet?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I had to jump on using my cell phone.
Good. We saw that. I saw that seatbelt earlier.
Okay.
Deborah, I saw you raise your hand a few moments ago.
Well, I was really impressed by what Aaron has done in switching gears, literally, and selling boats and being successful at that. This is a time where we may be faced with some opportunities as well as some disappointments, and taking advantage of those opportunities is going to be key. It will involve risk, and trying something new and a little curiosity. But I think that we may have some opportunities that we hadn't anticipated. When I think about it, my life has been full of them. From day one, coming from Bermuda to America, I didn't like it at all. I pretended I was actually a mermaid and I could jump in the sea and go home. Really, really wanted to go home. But my father was smart. We were in New York. He took me down to Broadway and took me to see the Rockettes at Madison Square Garden. Okay, New York isn't so bad. Let's go for it.
Sounds like he found another gear. So.
I loved it. And many of you may not know that I had quite a long career as a dancer and had my own dance company until I had injuries that forced me to switch gears. And I thought my life was over. It was just going to get better.
I think it's been mentioned a few times around that you have to keep going forward, and no matter what happens, you keep going forward. That's another reason I love to relate back to the truck analogy. Is there's this huge windshield in a truck, right? You set up high, you can see for miles out in front of you, and it's all about going forward. There's two little side mirrors that are about this big, and that's how you're supposed to see. That's all you have to see behind you. There's no rear view mirror, obviously. Everything is about what is in front of you. And you very rarely move backwards, only when you're unloading or something like that. So it's all about going forward.
Let's talk about experience being your guide. Going up that mountain again, it would be easier because you know what to expect, right?
Yeah. Oh, so, yeah.
Here's something else to reflect on. We're using a lot of metaphors today, I get it. But my car, for example, I just got brakes on it. I have 122,000 miles on my car, and it's a 2018. And I made those brakes last 115,000 miles. Do you know how I made them last that long? I didn't use them. I used the engine. I found another way to milk those brakes as long as I could, but I knew that they were going. And how I knew they were going? Because I've been in that place before. I knew how many miles I'd driven. I knew that there would be a telltale, right? I didn't wait that long, though. I made sure I was ready to do that shift at the right time when I had the money or whatever. And I think that's important to understand that there's multiple ways to get where you want to be. But you have to understand that while you're in that moment, you got to figure out your situation and figure out what else you can do. And then, like what I'm trying to do personally is make that shift into my business and make it smooth as possible without any hiccups. And you got to expect those things too. Like when you were driving down that mountain, what happened if a deer went right in front of you, or a moose? You have to add that into the equation, and you got to be ready for anything. Is my point.
Yes, in trucks, they tell you drive actually 2 miles ahead. You drive as far as you can see. You watch the horizon, and you drive for what's as far as you can see away from you. You actually cannot see what the first 10 feet in front of that hood is. That's a blind spot. If somebody is standing dead center in the front of the truck, you can't see it. It's a blind spot. And so you're always driving 2 miles down the road, anticipating what's happening. And you're watching that horizon, and you're always planning your escape route. If somebody were to come over and cut you off, you're looking, I can take the truck here, I can take the truck there, because it doesn't stop on a dime. When you've got that much speed and momentum and weight, it takes a long time to stop. On that note, I have to speak to something Aaron said earlier about Monte Vista, Colorado. That is the most beautiful valley I have ever been to. One of the first trips Mom and I took together, we took a load of paper to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Then we drove up into southwest Colorado there to Monte Vista. and picked up a load of potatoes and brought back. And I could not believe how gorgeous that valley was. So I'm so glad you mentioned it earlier. But I love going out west like that, because you can see for miles, but you are always watching the horizon to see what happens. So very cool. Thank you, Corey.
Well, I like the fact that as a truck driver, you have just shattered the illusion of big burly guy. You know, you got to be able to lift up a couple of hundred, and you and him and his dog in the truck and what have you. It's not about size; it's about knowing what you're doing, right?
Yes, it is. Let me show you something else. I wanted to show you guys a picture of my mom. Can I share this screen again? Let's see.
Sure. It should be good to go.
Let me get there. Hold on. Let me share this. Here we go.
Hold on.
This is my mom and I. So this is when we go together and you pull one of these rigs into the truck stop, and then two blondes jump out and go, we're putting in 500 gallons of diesel or whatever we need. You get some funny looks, but it's really a lot of fun. I'm going to stop this now. But it's really interesting. And actually in Monte Vista, whenever we were loading the potatoes out there, she, this is wide open country. There's 10,000 acres of nothing. And there's a loading dock. And she said, "Do you want to back it up?" And I said, "Sure." And my loading dock experience, this is wide open country. There's maybe two other trucks. There's not a lot that can go wrong. So I went into the office and asked the shipping clerk, which door do I get in? There were 5 doors. And they told me, and I go back out to the truck. And then I got in the truck and I started maneuvering back up to the loading dock. And as I'm doing this, my mom said, "Don't look now, but you have an audience." And I think word got around that, hey, this chick's going to try to back this truck up here. So everybody in the facility took their smoke break, and they went out and sat over here on the benches. And it was like I think they were exchanging money. I think they were taking bets on, like, can she really do this? And then I said, and you just, I pull it back up. It took me 2 or 3 times, but I got there. And, it's one of those things. It's like, well, I'm not going to pay attention to the peanut gallery. I'll do the best I can, and it'll be okay. So as I walked in, though, I said this. I said, "Don't worry, guys. I haven't quit my day job yet." So it was a lot of fun, but lots of good stories there. So.
Yeah, that valley there is considered it's like the highest garden valley in the world, because they grow, besides potato, a lot of other vegetables. But like Monte Vista is at 7,666 feet. That's the elevation. So yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of Monte Vista.
That was one of my favorite places to see. It was absolutely gorgeous.
You talking about backing, it made me think of a time I'd taken my boat upstream to Watts Bar Lake, and we were staying at UG Marina, and we had gone out that Saturday morning and spent most of the day out on the water. We just dropped a hook and sat and read and swam a little bit, and then a storm started coming in. And so I told Barbara we are to get back to the dock. Well, the transient docks there are, they put 2 boats to the slip. And they're, you can still put 2 pretty good sized boats in there. Well, boaters as a whole are very similar to bikers and campers, and I think truck drivers. They're very helpful. And some people may have a larger boat than others, but everybody's treated as an equal. And the class system's totally thrown out the window. Well, with that boat, I had a fly bridge. And so with the wind getting up, it was like a sailboat. no matter how much weight you've got, if you've got that much resistance and you've got a crosswind, it's interesting to back into a slip. Typically what would happen is the other boaters would see that, hey, we got a captain there that needs some help. Throw us a line and we can keep you off. Well, this guy had apparently docked after I left and had started to sing It's 5 o'clock somewhere, probably at 12 noon. And so he was completely blitzed by the time I got there. And he just was sit on the dock. It wasn't raining, but the wind was blowing. You hit it, you buy it. And I said, oh my gosh, this is all I need. So I said, I don't care if I tear my boat up. I'm certainly not going to touch his. So I asked Barbara to get over on the port side of the boat so she could keep me off of his boat, even if I were to, and I put fenders out to try to protect my boat. But even with fenders, if you hit it too hard, it's not good. So anyway, there are those people that aren't so nice, no matter where you are, but they are only a minority of people. And so there's always a different way to handle any situation that we're faced with. I just had to make a little change as far as how we were going to dock. Wasn't the fun way, but we accomplished it. Folks, it's about 9:25. Nicole, awesome job today.
Yes.
Awesome job. And
Absolutely.
I've been talking with a couple of people about, let's see, I think what would it be, June 12th? Would that be our next meeting, whatever 2 weeks from today is? Is there anyone on the call that would like to be responsible for the program 2 weeks from today? Maurice Lewis.
I'm not listening.
Yeah, you are listening.
I nominate Maurice.
You've got a story, and it's time you tell that story.
No, I have some things that I'm working with that are pretty demanding right now with the VA, and I'm very close to not complete closure, but respectfully, I'm going to decline.
Okay, well, I certainly understand, and so when the time gets right, you just let me know. Well, I've got a couple of people that I've talked with that have not participated in the meetup, and we certainly are not restricted to people that are members of the group. But any of you, if you have someone, Nicole or Bob, what about you? Are you still on? Well, maybe we lost Bob. But any of you have an idea of somebody that you would maybe have a good story to share with the group? There you're back, Bob. Let's see. Bob, you want to unmute? Are you interested in being responsible for a program?
I would love to be, but not in 2 weeks. Let me think about it and see what I can do in maybe next time.
All right. Well, yeah, 4 weeks. That's fine. That's no big deal. So, and what about you, Mark? I just saw you up there.
Yeah, I'd like Bob would be interested in a future week, probably not in the 2 week time frame.
Yeah. All right. Well, you just let me know when, both of you, and we'll get you on the schedule. Give me the topic, and we'll get it posted, because generally we have better turnout the earlier we post it. Unfortunately for today, boy, people missed a real winner with you, Nicole.
Yeah, definitely.
But it happens often after a major holiday. So
I've enjoyed everyone that was here. So this
It
this
was
a lot
it was
of
their
fun.
loss, but there'll be many that will be able to enjoy the replay. I'll like I said, I'll get that posted. I'll try to get it uploaded, if not today, tomorrow. Anyone else that would maybe hasn't said anything, but whether you have or not, maybe have something else you'd like to share?
Glenn,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to put me in touch with Aaron Murray
I will.
about boat sales.
I'll put you in touch with him.
And don't start smiling either.
I will put you in touch with Mr. Murray. And, I think most of you are familiar with the Chattanooga Marketing Clinic that Anton Demonchuk has started several years ago, which Anton's a member of the group and spoke last time. That'll be coming up Wednesday, I believe. And is that 6 o'clock, Aaron? Yeah, 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
And if you'll just look at Chattanooga Marketing Clinic, you can find it on Facebook, or you can just Google it, and he'll have a link. He uses Google. I don't think they call it Hangout anymore. I forget what they call it now, but it works real good.
And I will be delivering the program tomorrow there on data analytics.
Oh, you will, Aaron? I mean, Aaron? Yeah. All right. That's good. Aaron's a real marketing guru, very analytical, also like Anton. So they're very much complement each other. Well, folks, it's 9:30. Thank you for the inspiring program today, Nicole. Maybe we ought to look at a mother-daughter program sometime if we can get both of you off the road.
We could do that. She's not driving right now. She's got drivers and everything. So.
Well, that could, I bet she's got some real interesting stories.
You know, she laughs whenever I tell these stories back. She said, "I had no idea it was that traumatizing." I said, "It was. I'm scarred for life."
Well, I bet she's got some traumatizing stories also. Well, folks, it's 9:30. We always end it promptly. I love you. I believe in each and every one of you. And remember, your day will be just as good as you visualize it. I'm out of here.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you.